In today's teaching tip, we're going to show you the Lightboard that we have here at the Hub Studio. So what is a Lightboard? A Lightboard, basically, it's like a chalkboard or a whiteboard, but instead of being that kind of media, it's a piece of glass. So what we have here is a piece of glass that we can write on, and what makes this special is that it is edge lit. So we have a LED strip light that goes on the perimeter of this, and it lights it all from the outside. And the light comes in and it causes these markers, these neon markers that we have, to basically fluoresce, to glow. And what's really cool about that is that, as you can see, it really kind of pops, the graphics pop. So if you have any kind of course where you want to do anything, where you want to explain something, or if you want to do a math equation or draw a picture and kind of describe stuff, it's really great for that, in that it's very engaging. And from a faculty's perspective, one of the big advantages of it is that it's very quick to produce. So here are some quick tips to make your Lightboard videos a success. The first piece of advice that I have for anyone is to have a plan. Know what you're going to say, what you're going to talk about, kind of have an idea of how you're going to do it. You don't have to have everything flushed out. You don't necessarily need to have a script, but at least somewhat of a Coles Notes. I have my little list here of things to get through. And what that does is just kind of organizes you. If you're used to doing this every day and you've taught this stuff for years, then maybe you don't need that. But I always suggest have a plan, at least kind of have an idea. It's better than trying to sit here and figuring out, okay, what am I doing, and trying to figure it out. So that's my first piece of advice, is have a plan. The second thing to remember is that this is a performance. So you're creating a video for an audience. You want to be engaging, you want to be fun. And if you're passionate about the subject and you're kind of motivated, and it really comes across in your voice, what you're going to talk about. So keep in mind that it is a performance. Even though there's nobody in the room, it's just a camera, you need to be excited, you need to share that kind of excitement, and that will in turn be relayed to your audience through your actions. When you're on a Lightboard, I'm here. One of the things I don't recommend is kind of like drawing in front of your face, because it just kind of gets cloudy. I mean, you got all this other room. Basically anywhere except where your face is going to be is probably a good idea. You have a lot of real estate actually in the Lightboard. The Lightboard here that we have, I believe it's 3 feet by 5 feet. It's actually quite big, so you can go like that. And if you know the real estate, you can also figure out kind of where you can shoot and where you can't. We can't shoot the whole thing because we kind of start seeing the edges. So there is kind of a limit on how high you can go and how far to the edge that you can go. So if you're writing something out here, you're probably not seeing that, but if I draw it over here, you are definitely seeing it. So little things like that, knowing what your edge of frame is very important, and where you can kind of write safely without, interfering with you, would make the whole experience much better. Now this next tip applies to pretty much any video, and that's my number one tip for most people that start out doing videos, is the length of your video. Short and interesting is always better than long and boring. If you have something that's going to take 25 minutes to do, maybe you might want to consider breaking it up into smaller pieces. Or maybe do an overview video that kind of outlines everything in a shorter video, and then go and do specific things on each one of the things within that overview video that's in more detail. People always want to have what they need. They don't necessarily want to go through 25 minutes to find that little piece that they need. So my advice is always kind of modularize it, make it smaller, micro objects, and make many of them, as opposed to one big giant video. Is when you're doing this stuff and you're writing different things, you'll always have to erase them in between. And there's several ways to do that, but kind of practicing how you're going to do that, because as you can see, it's kind of awful to clean this thing. It really is kind of hard. It's one of probably the one thing that I would say is a downfall of doing this, is getting it clean. And you kind of really need to scrub. Now, I often advise people to kind of do what they have to do, stop, erase it, and then start over again. And what I'll do is, in editing, is I'll delete that section out. Or I could potentially speed it up if you're not talking over it, that sort of thing. There are different ways of dealing with that, but definitely practice. Now when I'm doing these videos, one of the things I recommend is, rather than having your notes kind of down here and kind of looking up and doing this all the time, is to kind of have them off to the side. Now I have my quick notes here, just kind of point form, and I've actually put them to the side of my actual camera here by my light, so I can just kind of glance over while I'm drawing, look at what I need to say, come back, keep talking to the audience, keeping that eye contact. Looking up and down is a little bit distracting, so if you can keep it anywhere closer, it just makes for a better video. Now our next tip is where to look. If I'm talking directly to the camera, that's like I'm looking at the audience. So if I'm looking at the camera right now, it's because I'm looking directly at the audience. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can also look at what you're drawing. Now, while you're drawing it, you're going to be looking at it to kind of say, okay, you know, like to make sure that everything is looking good. So I'm just going to make my little, this is going to be my little head frame, mine head frame looking project. You know, there's my shaft is going down, and there's a little bucket, and that's connected, and that goes up and down, and there's little side shafts that come off that. So while I'm drawing it, it's perfectly fine to look at what you're talking about or kind of refer to it, but every once in a while it's important to look back at the audience, keep that eye contact, and keep that engagement up. The next tip is something I struggle with. I have terrible handwriting. It is absolutely awful. You'll notice that there's not a lot of text on the stuff that I've drawn today because I am not very good at drawing. There's a reason why I do video work and not a calligrapher. So one of the things that I always try to emphasize when people are doing this is to write clearly, push and get nice thick lines, write clearly, take your time, you know. So if you're going to write something like notes, just take your time and do a good job. And that's one of my issues, that, you know, I don't do that. I can go point A and so forth. So little things like that make it a lot easier to read and to see, and taking that extra time really will pay off in the end. Okay, our next tip. In order to get good quality audio, I am wearing a microphone. This microphone is a little lavalier microphone that's actually a wireless microphone that goes to the camera. That's normally what I use in the studio here. Because we're mic'd, you got to be careful that, you know, nothing is touching the mic. So if you have long hair, or if you have any kind of chains or jewelry or clothing, the second anything touches the mic, it sounds really, really loud on the recording. You don't really notice it in the room at all, but it's just death to anybody that's on the other end that's listening to your podcast. And usually it means that I have to go and clean it up. So if you can avoid any kind of jewelry or long hair touching the microphone while you're doing it, you'll get cleaner audio and it'll be better for your students. My last tip has to do with adding anything kind of extra to these videos. If you want to add a picture or a video within these videos, that can be done. I normally do that through post-production, video editing process. If you have any ideas, just come and see me and maybe we can figure out a way to make it work. So that, in a nutshell, is Lightboard. It's a very cool way to present information for your students. If you'd like to know more about the Lightboard, or would like to explore some possibilities or set up a time to do some recording, you can contact myself, Jeff Transpotang, in the hub. Either come and see me, drop in, give me a call at my extension, 7654, or email me, and I'm always glad to help.